Today, on the Singapore National Day special episode of the Ministry of Car, I'm going to show you how to buy the perfect car to renew COE on. So, hi everyone, welcome back to the Ministry of Car, and this is the car behind me which rather matches the colors of Singapore, red and white. Just a coincidence, but it was such a good coincidence that I had to do this. And this episode is, or rather let me point at myself, is in response to a few questions I've received on my channel, because I advocate for renewing COE on nice cars rather than rushing out to buy a new one. So this episode is on how to do that right. And it is also targeted towards a new kind of Singaporean who is emerging. We have a lot of them. I used to be one of them as well, which is essentially a DINK, double income, no kids. So let's talk about two things. I'll tell you the history of this car because those of you who watch my channel know this car, and then we'll forget that we know this car because we are assuming that you're buying a car that you don't know about to renew COE on. And this car, this M240i, represents a very good choice for DINKs, but let's get into that. This car is my friend's car, as in it's my car now. I bought it over a while back. My friend got transferred to Australia, and those of you who have seen this channel know this car as Project White Lightning. And it's basically, my friend had it for 8 years, bought it practically new. Basically, it was a BMW management car. And yeah, enjoyed it, got transferred to Australia. Car had about less than a year left on COE, so he wasn't getting that much from the dealer, so he sold it to me, and I wanted to try this car anyway. So that's this car. But we're going to forget I said all of that, because when you're buying a car, you are buying something that you don't know that much about, so what you need to look for. So I'm going to break it down into the steps. Now, let's assume that you are here, you have come down to the forecourt and you're examining this car. As a dual income no kid or as any person, this is a very interesting car because it has space for 4 people. So it's a proper 4-seater, yet it gives you that lifestyle because it's a convertible, so it's a nice choice. So what do you need to look out for? The first thing with any car is even happens before you enter the showroom, because first thing is you have to look at the history of the car and the description of the car. Now in this particular car's case, it would have been, when I was buying it, a 2-owner car with 90,000 kilometers. And if you actually look in the iDrive of this car, every car is different. You can really Google what to do. But in the case of BMWs, all you have to do is that you have to open the iDrive and you go to vehicle information, you go to vehicle status, you go to service requirements, and you go to service history. And then you realize that, oh, you've got a full service history. So basically, number of owners and service history is important. When it comes to mileage, the mileage of this car is actually quite low. It's 92,000 kilometers, but that, for me, that is less important, because what matters is that the car has been looked after well. It has not been through too many owners who have just deferred maintenance. You have an owner who's maintained the car, and you have records of that. So this car, even though it's only 90,000 kilometers, if it had, say, 120,000 kilometers, but it still had the low ownership, still had the service history, it wouldn't bother me. I would still consider the car to be the same, relatively speaking. The other thing to note is that you can do a quick visual inspection of the car, but the most important thing is that you as a layperson will not know how to do a visual inspection. And just because a car is cosmetically decent, like in this particular car's case, it is cosmetically decent. Like, it doesn't have the typical sticky buttons that you would see on a BMW. Everything, if you look at the dashboard, everything doesn't look like a 9-year-old car really. The only sign of cosmetic imperfection is really this 6 to 7 button, shortcut button over here, gear lever, even the seats, everything is fine. But the point is that the cosmetic condition is not the most important thing. You need to take the car for a PPI. When you take a car for a PPI, you evaluate 3 things. You evaluate, has the car been in an accident? Does the car have any severe engine damage? Does the car have any severe gearbox damage? Chassis, which reflects in the accident, engine, gearbox. Wear and tear you would expect on a car of the age, and that shouldn't put you off. We'll talk about what was the case in this car. So arrange for a PPI at a workshop. If a dealer says no PPI, walk away. If a dealer says no PPI unless you take it to STA or something, walk away. You need to do it at a proper workshop. STA and everybody does do a PPI, but ideally you want to go to a workshop who does an individualized PPI because you are looking to keep this car for the longer term. You may have noticed something interesting, a word that I have not mentioned. Test drive. Now, why don't I think a test drive is such an important part of the process? 3 reasons. Number one, you and I are not an expert. Well, I am a little bit more, not really an expert, but I know what I'm looking for. But you certainly, unless you're really into cars, don't really know what to look for. Number two, a lot of cars have issues that you can't figure out during a test drive, really, right? You need to really look under the bonnet, you need to hoist the car up. Even an expert driving the car will not be able to figure out certain things visually. Number three, a lot of dealers, and especially if you're buying from a direct owner, they do not allow a test drive. So, which is why even if you can't test drive the car, it's not the end of the world. You could say that you're trying to determine whether you like the car or not. Yes, but then I find that typically second-hand cars are not a way to generally figure out whether you like the car or not, and generally the restricted circumstances under which you can drive a second-hand car, you can't really figure out whether you like the car or not. Quick note from the editing desk. So what I wanted to say is why you may not be able to test drive a car, what you can do during a viewing of a car, of a second-hand car, is figure out more practical things. Do you fit into the seats? Do the seats work for you? Does the space work for you? Some of these things that you'll be surprised. In fact, I have a friend who was buying a brand new Skoda, and they figured out that the sports seats that you get on the Skoda RS models don't really suit them, or rather suit the couple as well as the normal seats. So things like that. Those are much more practical. Figuring out the condition of a car from a test drive or whether you like it is really not entirely useful. So a PPI is much more important because in most cases, even if you're allowed a test drive, you can't figure stuff out, and in a lot of cases you aren't allowed a test drive anyway. And that's when you get to a PPI, and I'll show you what the PPI of this particular car revealed. Now, in this particular car's case, the PPI revealed something interesting. Well, the first part of it I already knew based on the visual inspection. The car needed new tires. Now, the car has already had new tires put onto it, but it's a very simple way to assess. I'm just going to show you how you can tell whether you need new tires or not with this particular car, which already has new tires. So hopefully that does not confuse you too much. The first thing to look at is the age of the tires. So you see this over here. In this particular car's case, you will be seeing 1226, which means the tires of this car were made in the 12th week of 2026. It's a brand new tire. But say the age of the car's tire is more than 5 years old, you need new tires. Doesn't matter what the condition of the depth of the tires are. You can again assess the measure. You can see visually the depth of the tires. So in this particular car's case, already it's been done. So if you're unsure how to measure the depth, if you're confused, if you want to assess whether you need it or not, just look at the date code of the tire. Rear tire, date code 3425, 34th week of 2025. So that's the first thing. This car had needed new tires. I got new tires done. Then when they opened the bonnet, I'm going to open it for you. Again, this car, everything has already been done, but I'm just going to. Now, you can visually look at it before the PPI, but the main thing to note in Singapore's climate is that anything that is made of rubber or plastic, you need to take a look at those. Those need to be assessed during the PPI because those corrode. They disintegrate just due to the weather. And this is what puts a lot of people off. Because if you were to look at, for example, this particular car's case, when I sent it for a PPI, even though this car had service history and it was serviced by BMW, I have a list over here which I'm going to show you in a second. This is what my dealer, or rather my workshop, came back to me with. They said, hey, you need essentially, the radiator is worse for wear, the water pump is worse for wear, the heat management module is a little bit iffy, and I can tell, or rather they can tell, that the air filter and the cabin filter need some work, or rather best to replace them because again they have been used. And you'd be like, oh my god, I bought this car, it needs all these things. But guess what, this is how much all of it cost. You see this full list over here? This is what I just got done. This is the same car. Look at the price. 2,800. So 2,800 bucks may sound like a lot, but it's really not the end of the world, because if you go back to my videos, what I've shared about how when you buy an older 9 to 10-year-old car to renew COE on, you budget about $10,000 to basically get the wear and tear done. So in this particular car's case, 2,800 bucks done to basically get the engine to be ready for the next 10 years. Small things may turn up here and there. And then you have the cost of the tires, and in fact I even got new rear discs done. I just remembered right now, rear disc brake pads and rear brake discs and pad, I got both done. All of this combined 1,930. So 2,800 bucks plus 1,900 bucks, 4,700 bucks roughly. What else typically would need to be done, as the PPI of this car also revealed, is that when you look at the rear suspension, and actually you can't really see it, so we'll ignore looking at it. But in this particular car's case, you also need, not now, but maybe in 10 to 20,000 kilometers, you will need to do the couple of arms. Suspension has many different arms. I'm not going to make this a thesis on car suspension, but there's a lower arm, there's a control arm. This car needs, and there's a thrust arm. This car needs the thrust arm done. And those are only 140 bucks a side, roughly speaking, plus labor. So yeah, essentially on this car, what you're talking about is about $5,000 to $6,000 of preventative maintenance to begin with. And of course, over the years, as I've always said in my videos, you budget about 1,000 bucks a year max, maybe 1,500 max rather. And yeah, it will be absolutely fine. So those are really the three steps that I have for you. One is identify the right car with a good service history, with low ownership ideally. If it has higher ownership, it better have full service history or close to full service history. Number two, do a visual inspection of the car. See if the interior cosmetically is good enough for you. But even if it isn't, we'll talk about what you can do about that in a second. But most importantly, schedule a PPI. On the PPI, essentially determine what needs to be done, and then get the work done. So now getting back to this particular car, where it is, and I'm now going to bring it to this one, because either this car has already been sold or it will be sold soon, because I've actually shot this video a little bit earlier before releasing it. So I'm not entirely clear whether the car is already on sale. I bought this car because I wanted to try this car out, but as is my policy, I basically do up everything needs to be done. So in this particular car's case, as I assessed, it needed new tires. I got the new tires done. It needed all the work done on the engine. 2,800 bucks, got that done. Needed new rear disc brakes, got it done. Cosmetically, the car was very, very, very good. So I didn't need to get much done. Now, even if this car's interior had worn leather, which this car doesn't, this car's interior really looks like a 2 to 3 year old car, because it is relatively low usage car and mostly highway miles on this one. You only need to spend $1,000 to get the entire interior leather refreshed. You don't need to do it on this car. But what I'm saying is, if you find a car with that issue, let that not put you off. The thing that I did spend a little bit of money on is that, rather silly of me, this entire start-stop motor button was just faded, so I got that replaced. Spent too much on it. Honestly, you can get a cheaper Chinese aftermarket version, but I just got the OEM BMW version because I'm silly like that. This particular thing, these buttons, I would generally just recommend just getting a cheaper version rather than the OEM version, because if you want to get the OEM version for these two, you have to replace this entire console. So which is why for these ones, I am actually just ordering, or I may have ordered, depends on when you've seen this video, the 6 and 7 buttons from a aftermarket. So for these minor things, it doesn't matter if I have a, if I have an aftermarket thing, I don't really care. Yeah. So that's basically what I got done on the car. And the car does need the thrust arm, or one of the arms of the suspension, I'm forgetting which one that my mechanic told me, but it's not due for another maybe 20,000 kilometers. So I don't really care too much about that for now, because it would not make sense to replace it that preemptively. But yeah, and the car is ready to go for 10 years of COE. And the other thing is, it's so important to buy the right model of car, because something like this would retain value, because A, you're not giving up that much. You're giving up about maybe $30,000 or less to retain the COE, unlike say my 7 Series where I have to give up close to $70,000. So this car, it makes sense. And this car, because it's a cult car, it's an M Lite. BMW M Lite cars have a cult following because they give you 90% of the excitement of a full M car, which is, it's got the nice engine, sound, sporty handling, without the compromise, which is very high running cost and discomfort that comes with a real M car. So something like this, for example, as an M Lite is a very good, or rather always has a demand for itself. In fact, older performance cars, you tend to see the demand taper. You'll see, for example, a lot of old M5s in the market right now, which nobody wants because they all need an engine rebuild, or they all are, they just aren't practical. But something like an M Lite, you will always have a demand because it just costs as much to run as a normal car, maybe a little bit more, but not dramatic. And it gives you probably 60-70% more excitement than a normal car. Yeah, so there we go. The last bit I'll cover, which should have been the first bit, is why do I think this car is the perfect car for a DINK in Singapore. Why do I think the M240i Convertible is the perfect DINK car? 3 reasons. What do DINKs need? DINKs need something stylish and something lifestyle oriented. This is a convertible. It fulfills that criteria. DINKs don't know where their life is going yet, so they can't have a 2-seater because what if there is an addition to the family? This is a 4-seater that can carry 2 baby seats if you require. It's that big in case you have twins. Number 3, DINKs wouldn't entirely appreciate unexpected costs, unexpected bills, unexpected cost of running. This car costs as much to run as a regular BMW 3 Series saloon. The only thing that you pay more on this car, because it is an M Lite, is the road tax. You pay the road tax for a 3-liter engine. Other than that, all the other running costs are identical to a normal BMW car. Headlamps, normal BMW car. Tire size, not that massive, only 18-inch, around the same as some more normal M Sport BMW cars. All the ingredients in the interior, other than the sports seats, you're not replacing seats anyway, but all these things, aircon vents, door handles, whatever you can find, all normal BMW parts easily available. Not only is it as cheap to maintain as a regular BMW, it's as easy to drive as a regular BMW as well. Honestly, tootling around at low speeds as I'm doing right now, making my way through Dempsey Hill, there is nothing intimidating about this car at all. In fact, its small size and dimensions make it perfect versus, say, driving a large SUV, which is occupying a lot more space on the road. If you are a slightly keen driver, as some of us are, especially when we are younger, you know that underneath that right foot, there lives perhaps the best modern engine that exists. I'll say it again, the best modern engine, because the V58 engine in this car does it all. It is the equivalent of whatever, the complete man or woman, basically the person who can do everything. It's fuel efficient, it's reliable, and it makes more power than, I don't know, than the moon. I'm trying to channel Jeremy Clarkson, but no. It really makes an immense amount of power. In this particular car's case, it's 340 horsepower. In a car that's as light and small as this, it can shift. It can shift. But it doesn't have to. Because when you're just driving around, tootling around, looking at the museum of ice cream which just went by next to me, you just enjoy it like a normal car. Which is why this M Lite stylish BMW M240i is perhaps the ideal DINK car. And hopefully this video has given you some insight into how to renew the COE or how to buy a car to renew COE in Singapore.